Okay, take 423. My name's Fiona Paltridge and I'm going to be putting together a project for you for 7 Studio using the Lost and Found collection. So here I'm just showing you some of the pieces. I actually didn't end up using any of the die cut elements or any of the element stickers, but I did end up using some of the clear stamps and a couple of Wow Studio pieces. There's a little stencil here called Measuring and a little piece of chipboard called Penny Farthing. And then of course the pieces of 12 by 12 that I chose, this one is called 213 and I'm going to use the zigzag side even though this other side is gorgeous. And the other piece I'm using is typewriter. So with the typewriter I'm just going to cut a couple of those little rectangles out. All my other elements aside, I did have a little bit of a dilemma on which side to use, but I definitely decided to go with the 213 zigzag side. Now here's some gesso. With a palette knife I'm just going to smear some gesso over the background. I do this for two reasons. One, because I want a really nice white background, but also because it's going to protect my paper slightly when I start to add some watercolours. Need to pop it aside to dry, and then we add some water, and then of course some watercolours, simply splatting over the top. Moving the paint around, I'm going to add a bit of brown as well. Brown will give it a bit of a vintage look. That mess in the middle, don't worry about it because we're going to cover it up. Right, so now using the typewriter piece I'm just going to cut out a couple of these little rectangles and I'm going to attach them to the tags that I've got here. Once I've glued them down, just give them a trim with the scissors so that they resemble a tag shape. Right, so now get some distress ink out. I think I used frayed burlap by memory and just give them a bit of an edge. I want these tags to look a bit rough, a bit like the background, so I'm going to add some watercolour to them as well. A few little spots, a bit of spray of water, dab it with a towel. So you just keep working at it until you're happy with the result. I want them to look quite grungy and old, get that real vintage feel. So next I use the Wow Studio stencil Measuring with some distress ink, frayed burlap again, and I'm going around in a T shape. So this will add some more interest to the background. I'm also using some black. Okay, some stamping, Lost and Found clear stamp set. So these are the little spots. They're great little fillers. Just using a permanent ink. Now I'm going to start rearranging my tags. I think I changed my mind about, I don't know, 5 times before I decide what I'm doing. This little thing that I'm mushing over on the side here, it's called plaster tape. It's kind of like a plaster bandage. A little bit of cheesecloth, paper doily. I'm not really sure what it's going to look like. I don't really have a thought in my head, I just begin layering. So I'm going to start with the cheesecloth. And then use some of the plaster bandage. What I love about the plaster bandage is it's got plaster on it. So when you wet it, of course, it becomes a little bit soggy and then it dries hard. So there's my first tag going down. See what I mean by I cover up the middle? Don't worry about the mess in the middle. I'm going to cover it up. Just putting a bit of colour on the doily. Can't have anything too white. And add a bit more cheesecloth. A bit more plaster. and then another layer of paper doily. So you can see I'm just building it up bit by bit. So this is just a piece of twine. So now we're going to work out how I'm going to mount my photo. Here's a bit of a larger tag. I'm just running a bit of distress ink around the outside, and I've got a square piece of hessian. Just cut it to size and stick it down. So this will be where I mount my photo. Just grunge the edges up a little bit, pull a few of the strands out. I decided I wanted to have my photo backed a bit better, so I popped it onto one of these little sticky notes and cut it out. I find these are really great for backing your photos. And it looks far too neat, so I have to destroy it with my scissors. A bit more distress ink around the edges, and it's ready to be glued down. Now I want my photo to stand up. I want it to pop from off the top of the page, so I put a bit of cardboard behind it. And there it goes. Right, now time to add some little fiddly bits. This is just a few of the little tags from the twine left over that I've tied together, and here's another strip that I cut off just to add it down, just to give a tail. You can see the T shape starting to form. Now this little frame, this is a gorgeous little primer frame, and I fluffed around with it about 5 times before I realised that I actually wanted it on my photo. I did the same thing with this little tag. Sometimes I think it's a good idea just to move things around until you're happy with where they are. There we go. Finally I discovered that on the photo was the best place for it. I often will let things just sit for a while before I glue them down, until I'm really convinced that that's where it needs to go. So while I'm fluffing around with the second tag, my brain's telling me that that is the best place for the frame. I do the same thing with the penny farthing, and then decide that the frame is definitely going on my photo. So now it's time to glue it down. Time to give it a little bit of colour. Again, it's a little bit too white for me. So I just add some watercolour over the top, and then some more flicks to help it blend in around. So at the very end I added the penny farthing. I also placed some white gesso and some microbeads on my project as well. Links to all the products that I've used today can be found on the 7 Dots blog. Thank you very much for watching today. Until next time, see ya!